pase, pierna derecha, directo al arco, ¡golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today. Duane, yesterday we had some Champions League action in the afternoon, but late last night, 2 MLS games kept us entertained, especially in the first one and especially if you like goals.
Are you entertained? Sorry, I was making a reference there.
I never saw that movie. I actually never saw The Gladiator.
I don't actually remember it, but I mostly remember it for that. You would have been pretty young. That was in the, mid-90s, the late 90s?
No,
I'm trying to
early
place
2000s. I think it was 2001, yeah.
It's all blending now. Look, where do you start? Obviously, we want to give some attention to Vancouver because we are the Canadian show and we do have the Canadian Review and all that sort of jazz and a 3-0 win. So maybe we'll start there real quick. Top of the West, points per game. Suddenly they're on fire. We've been talking all year about how the Whitecaps were up and down, up and down, up and down. Well, they're getting up at the right time. Can they sustain that? There's been a lot of chatter. I've been listening to a lot of non-Canadian based shows in recent days, and the Whitecaps have been center of the mind for a lot of people. So maybe that dream/nightmare of the all-Canadian MLS Cup final is in fact on the table, Kevin, because the Whitecaps right now, if they can get that bye into the first round, and first or second, I don't think it matters too much, but if they can get the top 2 in the West, and right now in points per game they're there, you got to put them as equal chance as anyone to get back into to win the Western Conference. And if Toronto does what they're supposed to do in the playoffs, then, well, our hilarity ensues.
No, yeah, that, for sure. And speaking of hilarity ensuing, Eric Hurtado scored last night as well. His first goal in a few months. Quite a slump for Eric Hurtado. But yes, it was against Minnesota. And yes, Vancouver was the better team, but it's how they got there, too. The goal by Eric Hurtado. Yordi Reyna scored the first goal for Vancouver. And Yordi Reyna's 4th goal since joining the Whitecaps. Finally, a goal scored that seems to be some sort of consistent for the Whitecaps. So that's positive. Montero creating the chances. That cross, Breck finishes it in the 84th minute for the 3rd goal. So it's 3-0. All transaction and moves that have been done in the last 12 months actually bringing in the points. Hurtado, yes, was there before, but Montero, Reyna, and Breck, yeah, those moves were important, and we talked about it last offseason. Before those moves, that something needed to be done. Those moves came, and now, look at it now. They're having success.
Yeah, and the one thing, maybe we should give some credit to Carl Robinson that perhaps because they're coming on at the end of the season, that they've watched what Portland did, they've watched what Seattle did, their 2 Cascadia rivals, and they've decided to I'm not suggesting that Seattle and Portland were purposely losing games in the first half of their seasons that they won titles, but the fact is that both of them came on late. So you could have seen a situation where Vancouver was just trying to peak at the right time. Not every team, Toronto is a special club this year, and I don't mean to belabor that or compare the Whitecaps to TFC. I'm only bringing them up because to make this point here is that most MLS teams have to manage their peak period. They can't be peaking for 12 months or 8 months or 10 months or whatever, how long the season is. They just don't have the depth to do that. If Vancouver, in fact, has managed their roster, managed their minutes, managed everything so that they can peak at the right time, then you have to give credit to the technical staff for that. So we'll see. It is still September. You want to be peaking in October going into November. September is a good sign. Certainly we saw Seattle do that last year, and I suspect that there are a lot of Whitecaps fans out there that are looking at that and want to suggest that they can emulate that, particularly the way it ended, which I think would be – is it not the Whitecaps' dream, like a Whitecaps fans' like fantasy camp situation where they would beat the Sounders in the Western Conference final and then go to the MLS Cup final and beat Toronto? Would that not be like the ultimate Vancouver experience?
With the second leg possibly at home, and let's not forget the home field advantage that Vancouver would have if they finish top of the Western Conference, at least for the majority of the playoff. The only game that they would not be not having home advantage would be the MLS Cup if it's against Toronto, because Toronto would have more points. And maybe if it's a New York or a Chicago. But outside of that, they should have home field advantage. to the majority of the playoffs, and that will be an advantage for Vancouver. Look at that famous turf. Look at BC Place. If it's rocking, maybe open that upper bowl for Vancouver game. We haven't seen that happen too often, but this could happen if things continue and heading to a home playoff date.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I would hope that the Whitecaps would look. The Canucks suck. The Lions aren't whatever. They're the Lions, and they're kind of the Lions anyway, but they're not very good either. So why the hell wouldn't you try and put all the attention on you? Open that deck up, get a huge crowd in there. We've seen a massive crowd for the Canada-Mexico game. Emulate that locally. I see no reason why in that market, if that team gets rolling in the playoffs, makes a Western Conference final, why you wouldn't open that deck up. Yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on that.
All right, let's talk about that touchdown victory by Atlanta it was the Falcons against the Patriots last night, right?
Yeah, well, a rematch of the Super Bowl, exactly, and maybe that's why Atlanta put the foot to the neck at the end, because they saw what their football team, Arthur Blank, went down into the halftime and said, "Look, guys, the last time I was playing a Boston-based team, we were up big and we relaxed, and well, it didn't go well. So you can't relax; you got to keep going." I hadn't thought of that.
3-0 in the first half, a natural hat trick for Josef Martinez. 2 penalties, yes, 2 red cards. Second, decided by video review with the assist of the VAR. Both red cards were given the go-ahead by the video review too. So some people are saying New England are getting hard done by video review, but you can't do the foul if you don't like. If you don't want to do the time, don't do the crime. If you don't want to get the card, don't do the foul.
Sure. This is what I'll say, though, on that. And we all know my opinion on VAR. And this is a bit of a contrasting opinion I appreciate, because I do believe that we should call the rules closer, like in all sports. I hate, we talked about this the other day, that when we were talking about the red card in the Liverpool Manchester City game.
It's not about how the game is affected after. It's about the actual moment of the foul, yes.
True, but there is some room for game management as well. And I appreciate that is either nuanced or hypocritical or whatever you want to say it. So, that second red card, I think that if you didn't have VAR, you probably would have had a referee go, "Oh, crikey, don't do that, man." Just stuck with yellow or whatever. But
you would have a conversation with the referee to the player. "Dude, you're putting me in a situation where I almost have to send you off. You're already down with 1 man. Could you calm down a little?" Yeah,
and I do see room for that, because when it got to 11v9,
Oof. It was going fast in Atlanta. Things were going really, really fast.
And here's the thing about MLS too. New England, they're borderline at best for playoffs, and I think last night kind of cemented that. But those
only
guys
1
are just
point behind the Impact. Sorry, Duane. They're only 1 point behind the Impact. Like it's not looking good.
Yeah, and look, the Atlanta pulled ahead the other 3 there. That might have done. They're down 3. They just really won on the plane at that point. And look, yeah, I don't know what to say with that. Like, if you want to go to the Atlanta side of things, there were some people that were suggesting that it was wrong for Atlanta to run the score up. And you're going to have, I think probably most fans are going to say, no, screw that. You have to score, goal differential matters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I buy that. The only caveat you'll give to that is people have long memories in this sport, and if you don't want it to happen to you one day, then you shouldn't do it to someone else. But at the same time, they put themselves in that situation, and Atlanta is, they're excited. They've got their fans behind them. 7-0. They've won now what? It's 10-0 at home, right? So in 2 games. So they're thinking, MLS Cup final now, right? They're like, we're gonna come back, and we're gonna this magical stadium. We're never gonna lose here. But I don't know. I don't know where to put this for the Atlanta perspective, because it's 11v9 and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Martinez with the hat trick, I think that's more of the focus, and you focus on that first half. I had pegged him as my newcomer of the year at the start of the year. That is starting to look better and better, I think, that pick, although I still might vote for Vasquez if I were voting. But I think all Toronto players are going to get screwed in the individual voting, because they're going to have vote splits. But regardless.
Well, yeah, but you never know what can happen. Maybe it makes Vasquez and a Jovinko on the ballot. Maybe a Red Bull type of fashion like last year.
Well, there's lots of talk in MLS circles about that real quickly. The MVP talk. There was a MLS on Extra Time Radio. They did an MVP check-in, and they basically dismissed the possibility of a Toronto player winning it, which I don't know whether that makes any sense when a team's having the season Toronto's having. I think maybe they should have a Toronto player win it, but that's maybe me talking regardless. Villa will win it anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's it's difficult, right? Because if you go by the pure definition of an MVP, if you use the V really correctly in the valuable, which means if you take him out of the team is totally different. Yeah, there's a point that if Villa is not with NYCFC, well, ain't good enough.
Yeah. I think we should change. The CFL does one thing right, literally
Best
one
Canadian?
sometimes. Well, they have their MVP is called Most Outstanding Player, and I think that we really should change the name of that of Troy, or have a Most Outstanding Player and an MVP, and have the MVP vote actually be defined as most valuable to the team, with outstanding player defined as best player in the league. I almost would prefer that in most leagues, but this wasn't on the agenda today, so we'll move on. New England though,
It's we were mentioning earlier, making jokes that it was the Falcons versus the Patriots. Kind of was true because it was Arthur Blank versus Robert Kraft, and let's just put it this way, very simply and quite softly, both owners are not handling their MLS franchise the same way.
Look, this begs the question of how much capital does Kraft get for the work, the money basically he spent to keep the league afloat during the bad years. This is the question with Kraft, and this is the one defense you get for him, is that without Robert Kraft, MLS may not be here today because he did invest a lot of money. But I don't know how much capital you give him at this point, because yes, he did that, and yes, he deserves credit. He's a very wealthy man. I'm sure that part of the reason he was doing that was self-interest, though, because he was putting in more dates in his stadium. It's probably a tax write-off for him. Let's not kid ourselves here. You know, they lose money, and he can use that to offset his other stuff. It's like almost in his mind probably, I don't know, like community service, like he's doing his charity or something to the soccer fans of the area. He clearly has never invested on the soccer side in the way that many clubs are now, including his NFL compatriot in Arthur Blank. And when you look at that, and when you compare and contrast that, it just jumps out at you. And that was, you know, a glowing example of it last night. And, you know, it begs the question of whether, I don't think it begs the question, I think it answers the question of whether it's time for new ownership in New England. You can't force, you know, an owner out, really, though, especially one that was an initial owner's. But I don't know. Maybe the fans, I don't know what you do if you're a Revs fan, and I've talked to a few that are refusing to go to games now, that they have taken that toll, that they said, look, I can't go to the stadium, I can't support this any longer. They're clearly, you know, every decision that's made around that stadium is with the Patriots in mind, and you get that. There is really no movement towards it. Well, there's a little bit of movement, but there's really no concrete movement towards a building of a stadium in downtown Boston, which we all agree, I think,
there's
would
talk,
be great.
But it's about it, right? There's conversations, but never necessarily a project presented in a fashion that would be good enough to be accepted, right? There was project presented, but they were not finalized. They were not necessarily put together in a convincing fashion. And there's that aspect. And there's the aspect, too, Duane, of Major League Soccer is growing. It's becoming bigger and bigger. And it does tell a story about mid-table clubs and bottom of the table club, where in the near future, the top of the table is going to look even further away. Teams like Toronto, teams like New York City FC, Chicago, and in the Western Conference are continuing to get better and actually putting points on the table and distancing, like, further. They're further away in the depth chart of the league than before. So it does give the fans of the middling teams, and I would include Montreal in it for now for this year, a different perspective of what a successful result is, and what a successful season is, and what are the end goal of the season is just to barely make it in the playoff. You know you're not going to win the league, so you're getting into a situation where What is your end goal every season? As a fan, what is your goal? What is the expectation of your team when you know you're not going to win the cup? You know you're barely going to make it in the playoff and you'll get eliminated the first, second round. What is the measure of a successful team? And that's one of reality of Major League Soccer becoming bigger in the next few years as well. A lot of teams won't have a chance to win the cup at all some years.
Well, it's starting to emulate the other major North American sports, right? In their playoff leagues and their big playoff leagues. And it would not shock me to see a 16-team playoff in Major League Soccer sometime in the near future. I hate it. I think that that's the absolute worst thing they can do. You should be doing more to protect your top teams. I'm not a purist when it comes to this, as people well know, but I do sort of favor a hybrid approach where you have some playoff, but it's a very, very exclusive playoff, something closer to baseball than especially baseball before they added the second wild card to what you see in the North American sports. Yeah, no, you're right. The biggest difference between MLS 2.0 and 3.0 in my mind is that they're starting to see a separation at the top. And you're right in fact that there's Golden State Warriors out there. We joked yesterday that USMNT was the Toronto Raptors of international soccer. I don't think there's truly a Golden State Warriors of Major League Soccer yet. I wouldn't put.
But Toronto's like the Cavaliers of the league. Maybe not the Warriors, but the closest damn thing you can have.
Yeah, they're right now that there's that separation where it's hard. As I said, when you envision the 2-game playoffs, and it's hard to envision Toronto losing any one of those games. You could see them losing the one-off if they were somehow go to a knockout round, which they're not going to. I mean, that's next to impossible at this point. Or in the MLS Cup final, obviously you can see them losing that because we've seen them lose that. But yeah, it's very difficult to see. And you're right in the sense that there is a class of team in Major League Soccer now. When you look at them and you go, they're never going to win the Shield. Like, winning the Shield is impossible. You could never see the Revs or even the Crew or clubs of that nature, unless they invest greatly, challenging for a Shield one day. You can still see them squeaking into that playoffs and having that run. And I think that that's how MLS is going to maintain its, its image around parity. It's going to allow the big clubs to spend big and run away with a league title, with a seasonal title, have it as a secondary trophy, which means a little bit more than it does in the other sports still, but then and still have this very inclusive playoff system, which allows for the big clubs to be knocked off in an upset. And I think that that's the balance MLS thinks works. And I think that's the balance that we're used to in North American sports. I mean, you see in hockey all the time, 7, 8 seeds go deep, unless they're based out of Washington, but that's a story from my own personal life there. At any rate, that's kind of where we're at right now, Kevin, and I don't know whether that's the right way for the league to go. I am someone who doesn't really care about parity, so I don't really care that much about that. I think that there's an adaptation. That's a tough word to say early in the morning here. Adaptation period for the fans as well, considering the expectations they have against their club. Now, every season, if you're not like Chivas back in the day, or Chicago last year, or Philly, or another bad team like New England this year, you don't necessarily have the feeling that you do have the feeling anything is possible. But this is slowly changing. I think Toronto's changing the game. I think there's other aspects of this league that make you feel like, you know what? Our goal this year will be to have a decent showing at home, show good soccer. I think we're going to see more and more of small teams defining their success threshold differently. Not necessarily a playoff spot, but maybe, hey, we're going on a Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup run this year or something. Yeah, look, the other part of this, and I mentioned this a couple times this year, but I'll reiterate it here, is that we're seeing a bit of a change, too, in how you build teams. Back when I started podcasting, I remember yelling at TFC fans all the time because we kept getting this noise from MLSE about how TFC was on a 5-year plan or a 3-year plan or a X-year plan, right? But it turned out to be an 8-year plan. At any rate, I kept saying that was stupid because you could see MLS teams go from last to first all the time. DC United is the king of that. Last, first, last, first. They kind of don't really go anywhere in between lately. But nowadays, I think you are seeing situations where, like RSL, and I think RSL is the model here for this right now, where you strip everything down and you go young and you try and build through that youth and get good in 3 years for a run in a year when you peak. And I think that has to do with your ability to afford players. And it's you kind of see this in the NHL too, where you try and get a young core and then you supplement it with a couple pieces and you go on a run for a year, and then suddenly you can't afford the young core and you have to sell them off, or trade them off in the NHL's case, but sell them off in MLS's case. So I think you're starting to see that model evolve, which is kind of again an evolution. That's the perfect word for it in how this works, because in the past in MLS you could really switch one way or the other. You could be terrible one year and good the next. Still seeing a bit of that, clearly. Colorado, an example this year, DC United, as I mentioned. But I don't think that before recently you've ever seen teams purposely strip down like RSL did, purposely go young like RSL did, in order to build and have that project starting to look like it's going to bear fruit down the line. So that's an interesting evolution too. But in terms of New England, Kevin, to end this, I feel for their fans. I tried to get Matt Jolly on today. He's unfortunately, he's based out of Florida now. He's a long-time Revs guy, long-time Revs voice. Many of you will know that. We tried to get him on. He had a little bit of a Twitter conversation last night where he was almost, and I kind of empathize with this, Kevin, because I followed TFC through the bad years where you almost get philosophical after a while.
Yeah, well, you had those moments on Twitter too.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's all about the friends that I met and the times that I've had, and I can't. You get into that stuff, and that's kind of what he was last night. So I tried to get him on, and I think we're going to get him on next week. But
hey, whatever it takes. If it's about looking at the games without looking at the game, maybe that's how you do it. To stay a fan. And maybe, look, I'll go to the stadium, but I'll just hang out with the fans and I'll hang out with my friends, and I won't necessarily even take a look at the field.
2012, I was there every game in 2012. I couldn't tell you anything about it. It was just an experience to be there. Anyway, yeah. All right, let's take a break.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Duane, yesterday we had a little bit of a Champions League. There was some great game, but you wanted to talk about Rangers, Benfica, and the ticket price. This game will be taking place in Hamilton in the next few weeks.
Yeah, well, that is the basis of the conversation, but really it's a CPL conversation here. And there are meetings going on right now about the CPL, which I can't really give you much of an update on other than it's increasingly looking like 2018 is off the table. It will be a 2019 start, which is disappointing to people. But as I've said many times before, it's not about getting it done quickly. It's about getting it done correctly.
Yeah,
anyway.
And sustainable, sustainably, where it's going to sustain itself. And if you go back to the recent history of soccer league launching, League One Ontario is one of the case in recent years, and they did delay by 1 year their launch because they weren't ready to launch at the level they wanted to, and it was a success after the 1 year wait. We'll see if the Canadian Premier League now with an office in Toronto, so they are actually having a brick and mortar office now where they can work out from. Well, I don't know if they work out from there, but they can work from there. So we'll see how quickly now it unfolds now that there's an actually brick and mortar office location network of the league is growing day by day now, minute by minute, and we'll see how that delay of a few months actually maybe benefits the league.
Yeah, precisely. All right, in terms of the ticket price, and I wrote an article on CanadianSoccerNews.com yesterday, which details this a little bit more. But as many people that have listened to me for a while know, or that have followed this news from other places know, one of the key business components to the Canadian Premier League is to emulate what we see in the United States with MLS. And if you're not aware of that, I'm not sure why you're listening to our show, but real quickly, it's a marketing arm which basically puts on games that make money that they then use to offset losses in other parts of the operation, right? So this game in Hamilton, which is taking place October 3rd, I believe, It's in the next international break. Regardless, it is between Benfica and Rangers. Obviously, Benfica is not going to have all of their top players there. Rangers probably but they may choose not to play them because they're also needing to focus on their Scottish Premier League season. The ticket prices came out. Well, anyway, so to back up, this game is being used, and I've been told this is being used as a test for this Canadian sum idea, so that they can use the revenue that they've generated from this game to point to potential investors and go, look, I know that it doesn't look great on the local level, and it might take 5-6 years of losses for you to start to, be able to generate 10,000, 12,000, whatever crowds that you need to break even. But we can offset that by doing this, and here are the numbers, and this is how it worked here. So that's why they're doing this game. The ticket prices, Kevin, the lowest price to get in the building is $50, and that is for standing room tickets. If $50 was a top-end price, I'd be like, okay, that's fine. It's the low end, and it's for standing. And from what I'm gathering online, they're almost sold out of those by now because anyone who's interested in going has looked at the other ticket prices and goes, screw that. I'm going to stand in the standing section and pay $50.
They will move us down anyways whenever they don't sell the other tickets and it's game day. They want to have the crowd, the stands full anyways.
Yes, there's a $75 price point. There's an $85 price point, and then every other price point is over $100, significantly so the closer you get to the middle of the stadium. And the top end price, Kevin, is $350.
How popular is Rangers and Benfica in Hamilton? Okay, maybe Benfica, maybe I can get that one. But Rangers, are they that popular? Do the demand of this game ask for prices this high? I don't believe so.
It's like
Miami Classico, pretty much.
Yeah,
the Hamilton Classico.
There you go. It's not much of a Classico, but maybe if it was played in 1993 or something. But
it's a friendly, right? Too. So it was like friendly between two clubs that don't necessarily have anything to do with each other. It's kind of weird. Anyways, and the price point is weird.
Yeah, and look, this is my fear, and I outlined this in more detail, as I said, on the article on CanadianSoccerNews.com, which you can read there at the top of the page. I fear that this will fail, and that they've outpriced themselves. Now, had they priced this at $20, even if it was $30, which I still think would be overpriced for an average ticket, $40 maybe even, I probably would have made an effort to go out just to be supportive of the initiative to prove it. But I can't justify going out to spend $50 to stand because it's also in Hamilton. And a lot of the Portuguese folks that might want to go out and live in Toronto. So you're going to have to hightail yourself to Hamilton, which is a pain in the ass if you've ever tried to do it. You have to take a train and a bus.
Yeah, if you drive, it's not that bad. It's about half an hour door to door if you're lucky with the traffic, which is rarely the case. But you're right. The GO system to go to Hamilton, it's just after Hamilton. Well, just before Hamilton, that's where it gets complicated. Where the train stops, you need to take a bus, and then you have to wait. If you miss it, you have to wait, and again, and it doesn't really finish late. So if the game finish a little later, and you want to have a snack close to the stadium, you have a chance of missing your bus back to the train station.
Yeah, no, it's very difficult to get there and if you've ever the stadium, it's in a very condensed urban area of Hamilton, so parking is difficult. It can get very congested, as I said. Like I went to the women's friendly there against England just before the World Cup, and we left my place at the time, which was in Eastern Toronto, which would have been, as you say, in perfect traffic, a 30 to 40 minute drive. It took us 3 hours to get there and park. So there's Hamilton and the complications for that, but regardless. So basically,
sorry, I was going to say, Duane, for the CPL aspect, for the Canadian Premier League aspect, like if you're looking at the price point, let's think about how much it is for an MLS team season ticket for in the supporter section, and this should be like the highest price point for your tickets as well. You want the culture to be involved, and you want that $150, $200 should be the season ticket price for supporter section. You can go higher for premium places, yes. But outside, like $500 should be the max for the season ticket, especially for the first year. It should be done in a way to attract people and make them stay and come back with a very affordable entry point for the ticket, and not the other way around. So if this is the model ticket, like price point, maybe not, but you might be talking about like a season-long membership for about $250 maximum, because that's the price it is for Major League Soccer teams.
Yeah, and look, I don't think the CPL tickets will be this close, but this idea that they can sell these games like this, to me, I worry about their understanding of the market, because this is, if you go back 20 years ago, you might have been able to sell these games at this ticket point, because people here were starved for soccer, right? Like there was a game between Celtic and Liverpool that was played at Skydome that had 50,000 people, and the prices were, when you factor in inflation, we're probably similar to now. But that was 20 years ago. That was before we had TFC every week. And Hamilton, although it is not Toronto in the market specifically, there are a lot of Hamiltonians that are TFC fans, and certainly they would look at TFC as their local team in the context of local football. So, and that's going to be a challenge for the Hamilton, whatever they're going to call them in the CPL, to overcome, to get, just like any team in Toronto, they're going to have the same challenge to pull away from TFC a little bit. So the idea that they can just flip the switch and have people show up to this, the market's more sophisticated now than it was then. The market understands what this game is. Again, 20 years ago, it's all we had, so we took it. Now it's like, TFC v New England's a better game because at least it's competitive, right? And if you're going to pay $40, $50 to watch a game, I might as well go watch a game that matters.
Depends how you define competitive. It will be New England after all versus TFC, but yes.
There'll be points involved. Yeah.
Yes. It will be it won't be an exhibition.
Yes, and so that's a philosophy that you can have, and also we're coming into October, so it's going to be the peak part of the season, and it's a difficult. The Leafs are starting up. There's a lot of Leafs fans there. They have their own OHL team there, which I'm not going to get into there. Trust me. Anyway, they stole it, but regardless, I guess I did a little. They have lots of sports going on. The Master University is a pretty popular football program there. The Tiger Cats will be still playing. Like, there's a lot of competition for the sports dollar in that area for them to just expect these people to show up. And if you're thinking that a bunch of Portuguese people are going to fill the stadium, look, not every Portuguese person is a working class person, but a hell of a lot of them are. And it's a hell of a lot of them come over here, and they're hardworking, honest people that don't have $150 to throw at a game, right? Especially one that they damn well know doesn't mean anything and won't have their stars. They'll go to the local Portuguese cafe that's 2 blocks from me right now and pack it on a Saturday to watch, pirated feed of the Portuguese.
FC Porto, yeah.
Yeah, but they're not going to pay that. At any rate, it's an ambitious play. If you can afford it and you want to have a night out, and you were going to spend that kind of money anyway on entertainment, regardless whether it be a Leafs game or the theater or whatever, then hell yeah, go please if you want to support the CPL. But I can't in good faith encourage hardworking working class folks or students or whatever to scrape money off the between the couch cushions to get to this game, because it's too expensive for what it is.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case.
All right. Hopefully this is hopefully it works out either in the fact that it provides a lesson to them moving forward, or it works. And if it works, then maybe we're screwed for it moving forward, but we just have to get better jobs. All right, Kevin, let's take a break and wrap the Champions League up.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
So there was some interesting games yesterday in the Champions League. We have the return of Liverpool in the Champions League after a while, and we had other great games. Madrid was beginning their group stage. Which game did you focus on yesterday, Duane?
Well, Manchester City.
Oh, of course.
And look, I talk a bit about that. I think, to me, the result of the round is both Spurs getting the 3-1 win against Dortmund, which I think both from like getting rid of their so-called Wembley curse, and also just as a marker against a very good Dortmund team was impressive. And Harry Kane with the 2 goals in that game, making a claim. We don't talk about Kane a lot, at least we don't on this show, as being amongst the global superstars, but he clearly is a very, very good player.
Yeah, but it's about how many years in a row can you do it? Not just a few, right? It's about consistency in the long run, and we still need to see it from Kane, right? It's like we're talking about Ronaldo, Messi, and Neymar. We're talking about a track record of 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years at the best at everything they do.
Top 20 in the world, though? Maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Top 15 even. Maybe on a good day, top 10 too.
Yeah, so obviously, but a very good performance by him and by Spurs, who, they got the early lead and then immediately coughed it up, and there's a lot of Spursy jokes on my Twitter timeline. But then, they got the job done, so you got to give them credit for that. City, though. John Stones brace, who saw that coming anyway?
He probably didn't expect that.
Yeah, and Pep after the game was very complimentary of him, and I mean he is Pep's guy. Everyone was kind of last year wondering what the hell he was doing. You can see the raw talent there. It's just he's not consistent right there. You talk about consistency.
I remember the own goal he scored, and I remember the bad back passes he used to do earlier on last year when Pep was trying to show him how to play in a different way and how to play from the back and not be afraid of giving the ball back to Bravo. And a few times it got costly for him last year. Quite a difference.
Yeah. Look, from a City perspective, Feyenoord was making its reappearance in the Champions League group stage first time in 15 years, and it kind of showed. I think there was a little nerves in there. The fans were having a blast before the game. They were singing Sweet Caroline. They were having a good time, but then, it turned pretty sour pretty quickly. And City, what's impressive about that from a Manchester City perspective, and still lots of work to do. They have an easy touch of a group with Napoli losing to Shakhtar too. That really makes it, it was a great day for a Manchester City partisan perspective because you assume Napoli is the team that they have to beat for first in the group, and they get a 4-0 win. Napoli loses. It obviously means City has to take care of business against Shakhtar and Napoli itself, but it's a good deal that way. But the point is they couldn't even they could not win a single game on the road last year in the Champions League. They start on the road with a 4-0 win this time. It's Feyenoord. They're the weakest team in the group. We understand that, but at the same time, this is a club that has a bit of a complex around the Champions League. So to get a 4-0 win, I think was vital for them. You mentioned, unless you have any thoughts on it, we moved to Liverpool Sevilla, I guess, to talk a little bit. We should talk about Besiktas as well with the 3-1 win over Porto.
That was a good result, yeah. Good result there. Liverpool Sevilla 2-2. Entertaining game. Yes, Liverpool unfortunately couldn't get the win, but for their return to the Champions League against a very good Sevilla team that has been there for a while. 2-2. Not too bad.
No, and I think it illustrated kind of the stuff we were talking about. I mean, they coughed up a 2-1 lead late with kind of what of a defensive meltdown a little bit. And it is going to be Liverpool's Achilles heel all year. That doesn't take a great expert to recognize that. And we're hardly the only people saying it. So, but nonetheless, European night at Anfield, they were in full voice and they had a good time. And Sevilla is a damn good team, as we know. Sevilla, it's a rematch of the Europa League final a couple years ago. So good result, I think, overall, although you'd like to get the full 3 points at home. Besiktas, Atiba Hutchison started, was the number one in terms of passing statistics in the first round of games in the UEFA Champions League. A Canadian had the best passing percentage. You can decide if you want to brag about that, if that's something that you want to fly the flag on or not. But
I'll take it.
We'll take it. Yeah, we'll take it. We don't have a lot. We'll take that. We should put a banner up or something, like a statue.
Yeah, we should build a statue for Atiba. I don't necessarily disagree. One game I focused on a bit yesterday, watched majority of it, was RB Leipzig versus Monaco. An interesting game, finished 1-1, and it's funny how Leipzig scored just a few minutes after Monaco tied it up. Well, Leipzig scored, opened the scoring, and Monaco tied it up just a few minutes after. It was the famous, hey, we scored, woo, let's do, oh, damn it, we conceded, and we're back to square one.
Yeah. Look, that was a game that I think that no one quite knew what to make of that one, because Monaco obviously is not the Monaco we saw last year in the Champions League, where they were really the darlings of it, especially in the knockout stage. They were playing great football and entertaining football. Lost a lot of players from that club, clearly, but they're still in there. And I think that Leipzig, obviously, with the way that they came from nowhere just a few years ago to quickly evolve into a Champions League, you're always going to look with interest at them. 1-1, probably a fair result on the day for that. I mentioned Shakhtar and Napoli. That was the stunner of the round, I would think. Shakhtar is always in the Champions League, and they're usually good for one upset, especially at home. Still, a lot of people favored Napoli to be a dark horse in this competition to go deep, and it's not the greatest of starts there for them to lose that game. I think that they would have expected at least a draw in it, but it is a warning, I think, for your cities of this world, and for City, that you can't take them for granted when you go into that environment to play. Not much to say about Real Madrid.
Yeah,
and
easy win, 3-0. Cristiano
two
Ronaldo,
goals for
Ronaldo became the first goal scorer ever to score in 10 straight Champions League. So there's that.
Yeah, and it's Ronaldo to Messi too so far in the Champions League. I guess you could talk about that if you really want to get it down to individual. And of course, the last
Neymar won, and Neymar won.
Neymar won there. Maribor and Spartak Moscow 1-1 there. Good result for the home team there, which is probably there to make up the numbers, but certainly to get a result at home to start that, even if it's against a team in Spartak Moscow that doesn't appear a ton in the Champions League, is still a good result for Maribor.
Duane,
All right,
I just want to finish the show quickly by talking about Gilardino, Alberto Gilardino, Italian striker, 35, now training with Montreal, and today is his last day of his training stint. To impress the club needs to acquire an international spot if it wants to sign Gilardino, and they can do so until midnight tonight. The roster freeze is September 15th, so today is his last training day with the Impact, and we'll see if he gets signed. What does it mean for an Anthony Jackson-Amel? What does it mean for Eman Kosu or other strikers of the Montreal Impact if the club signs him? That's a good question, but apparently he's been doing pretty well in training. But people are 35, he's old. How old was Zavia when he came and he was successful? You never know. It's a crapshoot, but we'll see what happens today.
There is a cynical view of it, Kevin.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
That someone wants that Saputo wants to distract from a poor season by bringing a former Italian international in. But look, I guess I do agree in the sense, and I had a conversation with an Impact fan back channel the other day where I said this, and I was being diplomatic a little bit, but I do believe this, that look, older Italians tend to age well. They do, for whatever reason. They can play later better. There has been success with bringing older players in at the Impact before. That is something they do. I do believe that they'd be better suited playing AJH a little bit more if they really feel that the season's dead, rather than bring a player in like this. But it's not impossible that he could not have an influence in the league. Although, when you look at the stats of the guys that were older, that success, Devio and Drogba, obviously the two big ones that came in, if you look at their goal scoring stats in the years prior to them coming to Major League Soccer, they weren't anywhere close to their peaks, but they were doing just fine. They weren't going two teams in 2 years without scoring a goal, which is the situation here. So we'll see. Do you think that they're going to do it?
I don't know. There's the tough trade possible of getting an international spot, and teams know that it's 1 minute past midnight, and then they know that it's the value of it, and they're going to ask for more. And so there's that aspect that you need to get international spot to sign him too. So how do you get one before midnight tonight if you want to sign him? It's not going to go well with the certain part of the fan base that are cheering for AGH if they sign him too. So I don't know.
You give up a second-round draft pick instead of a third-round draft pick, although at some point you may have given up all your draft picks. All right, quickly, Kevin, there's just 6,000 Europa League games today, so I don't know if we have time to run over all of them, but do you have any of them jumping out at you?
Give me 1 second. I'll just get them in front of my eyes.
Well, I'll start.
Arsenal in the Europa League is the story so far. How will they treat that? Will they treat this as their ticket to the Champions League like United last year? I got a feeling that they'll take it easy maybe in the tournament at the beginning, and if the opportunity comes, they'll go for it after.
I will probably watch Everton at Atalanta, just because that is an interesting match with Wayne Rooney playing in the Europa League against a decent Italian side. It's a little bit of an interesting story. The Europa League is way too difficult to break down until you get later into it, because there just are so many games. You just have to watch it and go, ooh, where are they from? That's kind of what it's like. They might as well call it the Google It League at some point if you're not from there at any rate, because lots of stuff going on there. Although both Arsenal and Everton are playing teams that we've probably heard of. All right, Kevin, I'm going to say goodbye. I'll let you, as always, end the show.
You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. Stay tuned tomorrow at 10 a.m. for another edition of Soccer Today with one of our favorite guests. And until then, as always, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.